Hi, everyone, and welcome to the American Finance Podcast, where we've got a CFA, a CPA, talking about anything to do with the finance world. For legal purposes, this podcast is not financial advice, this is financial education, and everything we talked about may not apply to you. So let's just jump right into it. One guy I actually talked to the other day was talking to me about how he was kind of scared of investing right now. He only has an HYSA or a high yield savings account because he thinks with the current administration and how volatile everything is right now in the world, he doesn't want to put in money to the investment accounts to see it go up and down drastically. And I was wondering, what do you think the advice you would give to that person to tell them now is the best time to to invest? I mean, yesterday was the best time, now is the second best time because you got to be in the market to start gaining any sort of real wealth over time. That HYSA is not going to do it for you.
And I think like also the key thing to point out with the high yield savings account is yields are going down. Like cash, we know the Fed's cutting. They're in a cutting cycle. Trump's going to replace Jay Powell in the next coming months, and we should expect to see cash dramatically drop after those Fed rate cuts going to play. So I think now is the best time to consider rebalancing your portfolio from being invested more in cash to maybe like a long-term equity or even fixed income if you're looking for a higher duration type of asset. And I think like from the perspective of investing, common notion is, when you put in your money today, you don't see it for the next 20, 10 years or so. But the market that we have, the equity market in America, it's very liquid. You can, put in your cash today and take it out, 2, 3 weeks from now if something happens. And there are those low volatility stocks, there are those value stocks out there that have higher price to book ratios that pay dividends and return reasonable returns that are higher than a high yield savings account.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you even said weeks. You could take it out in the next hour if you really needed it. There's really no shortage of liquidity in the American market, especially with the popular stocks and ETFs that everyone's investing in. I just don't know how someone would think, oh, I can't put money away in the market because if it goes down a lot, then I'll lose it. And especially with, I mean, the people that we know and are friends with aren't hedge fund managers. They don't have hundreds of millions of dollars in assets that they're managing. They don't have $1 billion that they don't want to see go down, say, like 10 million in a day. I mean, this is like if you put in $1,000 and say the market tanks 20%. I mean, that's only a couple $100. I don't know why you would worry about $100. Maybe if you were putting it long term and then say an emergency happened, you could honestly just use credit cards to kind of cover that in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a key thing to note is when you're buying single securities, it's another perspective than when you're buying portfolios and ETFs or indexes outright. Indexes give you that balance and give you that hedge from idiosyncratic risks that you're not going to get when you buy a single name stock like Apple or Tesla or Samsung. So if you're looking for just that broad market exposure, you're looking for a lower volatility play, it might be better for you to just invest in an ETF, an index, and then just hold it for a couple of years, and you're definitely going to be satisfied with those returns.
Yeah, and the ETF meaning like the exchange traded fund or a basket of stocks like the S&P 500 that tracks the 500 top biggest companies. This portfolio or this index like VOO or SPY are the stock tickers like that over the past month is nearly flat. So if you invested at the beginning of the month and now it's the end of the month, you would have lost like $1 or something. And even if you bought at the peak of the month compared to the trough, I mean, that was only going to be like $10 or something. It was, I mean, it didn't even, it hardly moved over the past month, like the market as a whole. Whereas if you did, like you said, buy Apple at the lowest point in the month, you would have made probably closer to 30 or like three times the amount. Or if you bought at the beginning versus the end, you would have made probably close to like $20 or something. So definitely compounds your wins and losses if you buy individual stocks like an Apple versus a whole index like an S&P.
Exactly. And it's important to not let fear drive your investment process. You shouldn't be it's important to keep in mind that these returns aren't guaranteed. You may invest and it may go down. But if you're holding for the long run, if you're actively saving your money, it's going to be better at the end of the day to save in a equity account and invest your money rather than just keep it in a high yield savings account, or even worse, just keep it in cash. Because there is inflation that's playing against those low return assets, and over time, you're really losing money if you're just keeping it in cash, and you might even barely break even if you're holding it in a high yield savings account.
Definitely better to be in the market with some stocks. And at least I think at least too when I try to tell this person why they should be in a stock is you're literally investing in a company that has people and products behind it that has some worth and value. Like if Apple were to go bankrupt, I mean, that means that all the iPhones, Macs, like TV products, software services that they've created and sold, all somehow just disappeared tomorrow. And you know that's not going to happen. Whereas, like you said, with rate cuts and things like that, they literally can chop your return in pieces within the next year. Like you can see it visibly go down
Yeah, I think it's
because of just
important.
the Fed's decision and not because, say, like the products are actually doing poorly. That's why I like to tell people just if you want to buy individual companies, buy things that you know and like to use.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, Apple's a 4 trillion size company. That's larger than many countries out there. Not just companies, countries in in their entirety. So I think when you think about valuations, you think about the product that these companies are offering, you have to recognize that their CEOs, their CFOs, they are people working, right now as we speak, working to make their products better, working to make their offerings better. And all this is something the market is taking into consideration and will continue to assist grow the company.
So I guess what would you tell someone who's like, okay, let's get on board with investing? How do you choose a brokerage? You see tons of commercials out there. You see tons of like Fidelity, Robinhood, Vanguard. You see all these choices out there when you search up brokerage accounts that you may not even know how they all work. How would you go about picking one that you decide to use for the long term?
So I know some people have restrictions in terms of what brokerage they can pick depending on where they're employed. For me, there is a shorter list that I can shorter list of brokerage companies that I can use, but I definitely recommend doing a bit of research on how long your brokerage company has been out there, if they have any legal suits claimed against them. For example, there was a time, I think it was around COVID year, shortly after COVID, where Robinhood had an issue where they closed down their brokerage platform for a short period of time, and prevented people from trading in a specific stock that they had ties to. Things like that are things you want to watch out for. And I know they have different um, promotions out there, things that may look appealing, but this is where you're going to be keeping your money. This is going to be where you're storing your nest egg, and you hopefully eventually have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on this platform. So it's better to think about this, from a long run perspective, and you want to hold your money in a place that has history, that has a reputation within various institutions, and you want to ensure that it's going to be in a safe location.
Yep, yeah, I agree. And it's definitely one to choose. It's definitely good to choose one that has like the backing of the government or has those regulations that are approved. And usually the classic ones, the ones that have been around the longest, are good ones to go for, the Schwab, the Vanguard, the Fidelity, and things like that. And the other thing I like to tell people is you don't have to stick with that specific brokerage like your whole life. You could transfer all of your assets and everything to another brokerage. So you could open up one account in every single brokerage account that you find out there, put $1 in, see how you like using the interface, see how you like transferring your money to that brokerage and then buying stocks with it. And if you don't like it, you can just pull it all out.
Yeah, and that's an important point to make. You aren't tied to these platforms. There's no contract that you have to sign which says you have to have your money in for X amount of time and you can't pull it out after a specific time. So you can do your research. You can, as you said, put a dollar in and see how far it goes if you like the platform. Something that I liked about Robinhood when I was using it in the early days that I found that many of the other platforms that I used they didn't have was an illustration of the options payoff and the options chart, which shows how much you're going to make, what the stock needs to hit before you break even, and so forth. But I had other issues with the platform that eventually swayed me in a different direction to use a different broker platform. But I only was able to gain that insight by logging in, creating an account, putting some money in, playing around with the different tools that they have, and then realizing it wasn't for me, and then switching to another platform.
Yep, and yeah, that's a good point. Is you can put in so little to these platforms now. You can buy fractional shares. Some of them are very user friendly and easy. I mean, you deposit the money, you search, you click buy, and it's already in your account, and you can use it. And then I know that some platforms are kind of annoying and kind of make you a little bit more of an expert, I guess I'll say, in how the mechanics behind the scenes works. I was kind of irritated with Fidelity, where if you have a margin account and you put in money and then you buy securities like too quickly before it says like the money is actually like available to trade and things like that in your account, that it might actually charge you margin interest for a day, and I thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, like you said, that Robinhood makes it very user friendly, very easy to see those charts, and then they even have like you mentioned the promotions. Some brokerages have promotions that they run for free stocks or something. I think Robinhood actually will match a percentage of your Roth IRA deposit, which that's really nice because you can only put in a certain amount to your Roth IRA, and the fact that they can let you get a little bit over that maximum amount that the government says, like that 7,000, you could get like I think it's like 7,200, which isn't a lot more, but it's definitely free money that you could get more if you wanted to go that route.
Yeah, that's definitely. I haven't heard about that before, but that's definitely something that sets them apart from the rest of the competition. I know a lot of people don't necessarily invest in a Roth IRA, but it is something that will help build your nest egg and build your investment and net worth over time.
All right, I'm interested in learning more about this maturity wall. Do you have any background in this maturity wall concept, why it may matter to certain people compared to others, and just some background on the topic?
Yeah, so I guess let's dive right in. So something came across my desk recently where we were concerned about our exposure on the short end of the curve. So if you think about a credit curve, we have in America we have yields ranging for bonds that mature in the next 3 months or bonds that mature in the next 30 years. Um, the U.S. national debt is in the trillions. We know it's one of the largest national debt. We're one of the largest national debt holders in the entire world. Um, but what people don't know is that most of the debt is set to mature um, fairly soon. So we actually have 1/3 of our total national debt set to mature in 2026 this year. And what's interesting about that is a lot of the interest rates that we have on those bonds and notes is significantly lower from what our current refinancing rate would be. So we're going to have to be moving from yields in the low single digits, like maybe 2, 3%, to yields significantly higher, like maybe 5, 6% on some of these bonds. So what we're probably going to see happen in the U.S. bond market is instead of the central bank issuing bonds at longer maturities, they're probably going to pull back their issuances so that we're seeing maybe like 3, 6, even like 1 year issuances because they obviously don't want to hold debt and have debt out there for 30 years at a higher interest rate. So we should see and we should expect a significant amount of refinancing, and then on the short end of the curve, we should see that increase significantly because of the increase in supply.
Yeah, so for those looking at maybe the fixed income stocks or bond portfolios that they have, what do you think some of these impacts could be? Do you think like yields and prices will come down because of the influx of the government refinancing, or do you think something else might happen?
Yeah, so it's really hard to say because there are, two different forces on the short end of the curve on the bond market. And we see the products from like a short end on as we discussed, like a high yield savings account, an account that invests in short duration securities and gets cash yields. And those two forces are one, the Fed. The Fed is expecting to reduce rate and is currently in their cutting cycle. And we had Donald Trump announce that Kevin Warsh would sit in the Fed seat when Jerome Powell's term is up, and we expect him to, not be as hawkish as Jerome Powell, even though he has had hawkish views in the past. So we expect him to reduce rates. However, from the refinancing perspective, when we hit this maturity wall, we expect the central bank, the U.S. government, to have to refinance a significant amount of debt at a shorter duration. And when you refinance at a shorter duration, you're increasing supply on the short end of the curve. When you increase supply, you need to increase yields in order to make them more attractive. So those two driving forces are going to sort of conflict against each other. So we're just going to have to wait and see what the overall impact would be on the bond market.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, I guess, the government shutdown and funding the government with, because this is how they're funding a lot of projects. How do you see government shutdowns affecting the stock market in general?
It's a good question. So what we've actually been seeing is that geopolitical tensions have been mainly isolated from market risk. We saw when Trump captured Maduro in Venezuela, the markets barely moved. I mean, we saw a little bit of volatility in Chevron and even like a slight bit of volatility in the oil price market, but there are these larger forces, the AI bubble, OPEC oversupply, that are largely driving these markets rather than the geopolitical risk and tensions. And even from a Fed perspective, although we're pricing in lower rates, the market isn't pricing in that higher volatility that is associated from Fed independency and also these geopolitical tensions with threats to Greenland, threats to other NATO countries, and the tariffs that have been circulating.
Yep, I think one of the best things to kind of point to now, while the US hasn't been around that long, the US government always seems to come around, whether it's paying back on their debts or funding the government so that they actually can continue spending and operating. And I feel like from what I've seen in the market, yes, there is some like noise that's caused by the like government shutdown or things like that, but they've done studies, they've shown the stats, they've come out with the graphs. I mean, the government shutting down is not going to prevent the market from going up. And also, like you said, overall, like I mean, even with the capture of Venezuela, thinking that the oil prices are going to do X, Y, or Z. I mean, I don't know about you, but I saw gas prices, at least on my end, go down before or like as it was happening almost compared to after. They kind of just rebounded to normalcy, I'll say. I don't know. Did you see the same thing when you were buying gas at the pump?
Yeah, I mean, gas prices for me stayed pretty stable. Um, and even when, we saw the disruption in the oil market, I feel like because the supply chain dynamics are so insulated within America, it takes a really long time and something to significantly push the needle for us to see that trickle through down to the consumer and an impact on that consumer side of demand.
Yeah, there's so many oil players in the game. And you got the US, you have even like smaller things like the natural gas produced, you've got Venezuela with the oil, you've got the Middle East, you've got like those monopolies and the OPEC and stuff like that that's kind of colluding. And I mean, there's so many different factors that overall I feel like it's hard to pinpoint this specific event made gas prices change by like 10% or something. And honestly, like I think when I looked at the gas prices, they changed from like $3 to like maybe 2.40 or something. There's a gas station right by where I live, and I just have looked at that, and I think it was like 2.40 to like $3 ish range, which isn't a huge range to be honest, especially with other states and places being like $6 in gas.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we did see an increase in the in gas probably around like 2 3 years ago when Russia first invaded Ukraine. But I mean, we've pretty much recovered from those levels of prices, and we're back to normal. I'm looking at the chart here, and it's actually saying that gas is down around 10% in aggregate over year. So it is pretty stable, and we aren't seeing that increase that we would expect to see given given where the market is at and the sentiment around gas.
Yeah, I guess that kind of reminds me of my current dilemma of the EVs versus gas cars, with electricity being so much cheaper than gas, but at the same time, these companies now, like Electrify America or mainly this Tesla superchargers, they're charging, I mean, almost gas rates at some point at some places for their electric charging. And I've seen a lot of posts now online of I bought this Tesla thinking I'd be saving so much on gas every year, and it turns out I'm paying exactly the same as gas. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I actually had a buddy yesterday that I was talking to, and his wife just bought a brand new Honda, and it's a EV.
The prologue.
Yeah, I think it was that, and she said that because it's so cold out, instead of her car lasting, a week or 2 weeks, she's having to charge it every day. And she says it costs $40 to charge every day because she can't afford to charge it at home because it takes too long. And it's crazy to think that if you are purchasing this vehicle with the thought that you have lower transportation costs, but then your transportation costs instantly spike when it's colder out, that just changes the rationale for someone looking to switch from a gas powered vehicle to a EV vehicle where you need to sit down at the charger if you're not at home and wait for your vehicle to fully charge.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So, since my dad owns a Tesla, I kind of get some of the trickle down effects from what he's experiencing. And it's interesting all the little nuances from those vehicles. I mean, we're used to you hop in a gas car, you turn it on, you let it warm up a little bit when it's really cold, and then you head out and drive on. And these gas car and these EVs have so many little intricacies. I learned online that you are best if you actually warm up the car with, I think it was cabin heat for like 10 minutes or something before even driving it or something like that. Because then the cabin heat will help heat the battery pack so much that the battery pack won't go down in range as much as if you just jumped in your car, turned it on, and started driving. And I also learned that the regenerative braking, doesn't even really turn on until your battery pack is warm enough. And even with that, it's not as high of regen compared to the summers. So there are these tiny little things that these EV owners are realizing that you have to do or have to be aware of just to get that range extension. And like you said, if someone charges really slowly at home and they can't either afford to or it's not possible to put in one of those super high voltage chargers that they can charge quicker with, then plugging in every day at home isn't going to get them as far if they need to drive too many miles every day on that EV, and then it ends up being pretty expensive in the electricity cost because like you said you have to go to a supercharger and wait to charge up fully to be able to make your commutes.
Yeah, and if you're trying to charge anywhere other than your house, and I've experienced this because I unfortunately had the chance to rent an EV for a road trip, and what I found was I spent probably 2 to 3 times what I would have spent on gas, and the trick. the trip took around 50% longer than expected. And I was stopping at these superchargers, and then they have like some of these nice Mercedes-Benz chargers that are faster than the others, and then there are also Tesla chargers that are quite fast as well. But you're still waiting at the charger for your vehicle to charge, and that's time that you could have been spent driving and just getting to your destination. I think the convenience of the gas powered vehicle, just being able to pour gas in your tank, takes 5 minutes max, and then you're ready to hit the road for another 400 miles. Just a convenience that you can't really beat in this day and age.
Yeah, and you see so many of these car company stocks taking these massive billion-dollar hits on their books because of their investment into these EVs. And I just think it's kind of crazy for investors to kind of already be looking into like the profit or the revenue numbers for these EVs and wondering why, say, like GM or Ford or something hasn't been materializing these gains that they expected within literally like a few years, like maybe 2 years. They're like, how come Ford isn't in the black making billions off of these EVs like Tesla is, when there's no infrastructure built out? There's so many unique, like, different issues, I'll call them, or different like nuances of these cars that people don't understand. And they're already saying, oh, we had to take a $20 billion loss on this because they're not selling as quickly. And it's like, yes, because they're so new and different. People don't really know what they're going to get with your car and even over a Tesla, because Tesla at least has a decent infrastructure built out. People kind of know what they're getting into with the Teslas, and they've already been in production for over a decade. So they have a lot of these problems figured out, or they have these economies of scale that let them produce these good cars at cheaper costs, and people wonder why someone's not buying a more expensive quote unquote name brand from, say, Ford compared to Tesla. And it's like, because there's no incentive to.
Yeah, and I did also see that a lot of the tax credits for some of these EV cars have completely vanished. And a lot of there's that argument that the whole EV market is propped up by government subsidies, and this demand is not natural. It's authentic, and it's synthesized by having those credits in place to incentivize consumers to purchase. But something that's interesting to me is Tesla's one of the only automakers out there that only invests in EV cars. They don't have another lineup. They don't have like another gas a powered line that is comparable to their EV lineup, and that's something that I think pushes them above the competition. So they're able to focus only on improving their current lineup. They have a an amazing ecosystem where there you can see their chargers everywhere, whether it's at different gas stations, whether it's at your supermarket or your Target, and you're just able to go charge your vehicle easily without having to wonder, are you going to be able to make it to your next stop without um with running low on charge.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking into buying an EV, there's actually a lot of EVs out right now, but like you said, Tesla has so much of the infrastructure built out, and that's just from time and dedicated investment. You make a good point with they have only one fleet of cars and they're all EVs, so they don't have anything else that's kind of distracting them. But at the same time, I look at these EVs and I think, why would I buy a car that has, I mean, Tesla's newest cars, I think, are coming close to gas ranges, like with 330, 350, and then their Model X and S, I think, can even get to 400 while they're still around, that is. But coming close to in the 300 range of miles is coming close to a gas car of about 350, 400. Sometimes you can get like 450 out of a gas car and stuff like that, or 500, depending on how efficient it is. But these ranges are good, but you look at, say, the Honda Prologue or these Ioniqs from Hyundai, they can only go, they're not even reaching the 300 mark. And like you said, if you're trying to take if you want to take one road trip or something, or even just go a state over for 3 hours, that's going to be pretty much your whole tank. I mean, 250 in the winter is not going to get you very far.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also important to note that there are certain demand factors influencing the price of how much it costs for you to charge your car. You're not only competing with um, your neighbor or people or the everyday grocery store next to you that's demanding power from your local energy supplier. You're also competing with maybe like an AI data center in your state or a large company that has AI infrastructure that's increasing your energy bill. So what you might be signing up for is a volatile price at which it costs for you to operate your vehicle. We're seeing these AI companies like Meta, Amazon build these multi-story data centers that are consuming so much power. Most of these energy suppliers have no choice but to increase the bill and harm energy and harm everyday consumers.
Yeah, so that kind of brings me to a new topic with you shouldn't really be looking to buy these more expensive EVs up front, hopefully save on all of these maintenance costs over time. So if you're trying to buy an EV that may be more expensive than your gas car equivalent that you'd rather have or that you could have had because you think you're going to save more on electricity, save more on no oil changes or maintenance, things that could go wrong with the car, you probably are making the wrong mistake and you should go for a cheaper car. And I kind of wanted to talk about affording something versus being able to buy it because this was a new TikTok that I saw the other day. It basically was this lady complaining online about people altering their Louboutin shoes, so those red bottomed heels that a lot of girls like to wear or that are really expensive shoes that are hard to actually buy for a lot of people. And this lady was showing two of them and was saying, "Oh, if you can't afford to have these shoes look like this or be worn out a little bit on the bottom or something like that." I don't really know the exact premise. And this other person responded with just their collection of Louboutin shoes behind them. And I kind of was wondering your opinion on this whole affording something versus buying something. Because even if, say, you get $1,000 paycheck and you could buy, say, I don't know, say like a Louis Vuitton like scarf or something that's like $900. Yeah, you can technically buy that because you have enough money, but affording it meaning you could buy a lot of them or you wouldn't notice the purchase if you bought it. I guess what is your opinion on buying like those statement pieces? So something that's not like a car or house that you are pushing your boundaries on that you know because the payments are going to be so high, but something that you're like, oh, I'm gonna buy these $1,000 pair of sneakers that are from Off-White Nike that I'm gonna try to protect, I guess, and wear like less frequently, but I wanted it because it's really cool and it's a statement piece. Like, what's your opinion on like affording versus buying?
I definitely think there is a push that I see in America where people are living outside of their means. From the perspective of buying Louis Vuitton, keeping up with the Jonases, so to speak, it's not relevant for the everyday consumer to go out there and spend a ton of money that they can't afford on these designer bags, designer shoes, um, and then they don't have anything in their 401k or they don't have anything in their Roth IRA. It makes sense for individuals and consumers to sit down, do a budget, understand how much money you need to actually put away to retire, because that's a conversation that I think most people haven't even had yet. Like saying, this is my goal. I need 4 million to retire, or maybe you only need 800K to retire, depending on how old you are. But understanding how you're going to reach that goal first and then working back to say this is how much money I actually have to spend, I think is the best way to think of it. From the perspective of brands and buying, Louis Vuitton or Gucci or whatever, it's really not worth it. It's especially for most people who are are still living, from one paycheck to the other, and still, are thinking about how they're going to pay the bills. It's definitely not something you should be doing.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think social media has definitely promoted this fact of buying these statement pieces for people because you don't have to buy that many, but if you show online that you have that thing, then people are like, "Oh wow, you have like made it or you've got money." Because if you take a picture and post it online of, "Oh, here's me, say at the beach with my Louis Vuitton bag or sunglasses or hat or something," then everyone's like, "Oh wow, look what they can afford or look what they've got with them or something." And they somehow think that there's this like prestige and status that comes with it. And in some cases, I think buying those more expensive items could be worth it if they give you one, the quality over a say cheaper item. Like so if you were to buy, say, I don't even know, like say a Kate Spade bag, and that Kate Spade bag that you've bought in the past wears out or breaks on you in 2 years, and this Louis Vuitton bag is supposed to last you 7, then maybe I guess you could argue that you'll get more use and value out of that bag. I kind of try to go for a per use kind of dollar value and how much I think that it's worth. So, say for example, if I buy like a tennis racket that's $200 or $300, but I will use it 3 times a week for the next 6 years or 5 years, then it only ends up being like $5 a use or $1 a use or whatever. Then I feel like that's worth it compared to say something that's much cheaper that might break or that might not be what exactly that I want. But I do think it's kind of tough for some people to kind of like buy some of these items, even on the frequency that they are, like you said, when they don't have their Roth IRAs maxed. And I guess what would your opinion be on where you think your retirement and your savings, especially for emergencies or next large purchases, like say your next car, your next house, where would you say that the threshold of meeting would begin before you can start thinking about could I afford, say, the next tier up in, say, the clothes you wear, or the shoes you wear, or even like makeup brands for women or cosmetics or things like that. Just have that next stage up, or even phones and electronics. Where would you say that the threshold is to kind of meet before you can start thinking about, can I afford the next level up?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how old you are, how close you are at retirement, and the type of lifestyle you live today versus the type of lifestyle you want to live when you actually retire. So if you don't have anything put away, and you're going out and you're upgrading your phone every year, you're upgrading your entire wardrobe every season, buying new outfits, but you haven't even thought about how much money you actually need to retire, how much money you need to provide for your kids if you plan on having kids in the next 10 years, how much college is going to cost. Then I think you're putting the cart before the horse. I had a deck come across my desk recently, and it said that the if you have kids today, let's say you have had a kid today, and you expect your kid to go to college in 18 years, the expected price for that college tuition will be $600,000 a year, and that's something that sorry, $600,000 in aggregate, and that's not something that we even think about when we're going to the store, going to the mall, buying a bag. You're not thinking about a $600,000 price tag if you want to put your kids through college, in 18 years. But because that is such a large purchase, you're going to have to think about that beforehand. So I would really say it's best to have your ducks in a row. If okay, I'm setting aside this much in my 529 plan for my kids. If I'm setting aside this much for myself in retirement, then I can go ahead and spend a little bit to upgrade my phone this year, or spend a little bit to upgrade my wardrobe. But I think the biggest problem with social media and with the internet is we don't spend time actually thinking about those long-term goals and objectives. We're just thinking about today or tomorrow, even next year. And that's not long term. Long term is thinking about what your life will look like in the next 20 years. Will you be prepared for that? Will you have enough money to send your kids to college, or to even retire and to stop working at 60 or 70, or even stop working at all?
Yep, yeah, I completely agree. I think it's part of kind of the folly of human nature where we evolutionary were brought up to look at today, what you need to eat today, what you need to eat tomorrow, or even just this harvest season with are the crops coming in, yada, yada, yada. But now we've got the medicine, the food, the basic necessities. For the most part, everybody kind of has access to or relatively knows where they are. I guess in America to just begin with, but and it's really about looking forward. Like you said, those next years, the 10 years down the road, the what is my family going to look like? What am I going to look like? Or what do I want to look like? What do I want to have in my bank account or feel like? And will it be enough for retirement? Because no one knows. And yes, while some people bring up the argument of I could be hit by a bus tomorrow and die, and then what was all the saving for? But I think that it's better to honestly, like just from like a human nature perspective, like live a little bit beneath your means, be modest in what you're buying. Sure, you could spend more on certain goods that you think, okay, it actually is worth it because I get more value or my life will actually improve from this. Like I think recently I've been on a more of a health conscious purchase like trend, I guess I'd say, where the purchases that I've been making, while it might be slightly more expensive, it's because the health benefits are so much nicer. Like it makes your quality of life better. And I think those purchases I can kind of rationalize a little bit better than, say, a logo being XYZ compared to ZYX.
Exactly, and I think it's also important to prioritize your health and well-being, because if you want to be able to enjoy your retirement, enjoy the savings that you're putting away today, and the sacrifices you're making by not splurging, not spending every cent you have, you have to be healthy enough to enjoy that. And I think it's also important to look at what resources you have, through your employer, or through um, or through your community to save for your health. I know we talked a bit, last week about HCSA, where you can put away a bit of money into a health account pre-tax, and then use those for purchases if you are purchasing something that will improve your health. And I think you showed me late last year, the depth and breadth of the library of things you can actually purchase with that account.
Yeah, for sure. I actually just recently bought some of those no I think the Nike Hyper Ice boots. I went ahead and bought those just to see if they would actually help me with I wouldn't say the ankle problems that I've had, but just I felt like when I've gone to do exercise, it would take a little bit longer for my like feet and ankles to warm up. And especially after having like a few sprained ankles and kind of knowing the kind of the pain and the clicks and the things that have gone on with them, I was going to test those out and see if that would actually help me with my feet and ankle health just because I wear on them all the time. And like you said, you can put in pre-tax money into that healthcare account and I can buy this on whatever my tax rate is discount, which really helps. And and also you mentioned that the employer helps out. And if I get these health milestones achieved, then I get money put in there from my employer that I didn't have to even put in. And if I'm not going to spend that money on anything else this year, then I thought, okay, that can actually subsidize this cost to pretty much be just a regular pair of shoes purchase for me compared to something very expensive. And I even was talking with my manager about it the other day, and he said he totally forgot about earning that free money that the company gives you every year towards health benefits. after he started back at the company. And I thought that's crazy because they give you several $100s for free a year just by meeting these simple requirements. And people are just foregoing that money that they could be getting for free, paying for their subscription prescriptions from either over the counter or medical needs, doctor appointments, those specialty appointments if you had to go to like a dermatologist checkup or something like that. And a lot of these people just don't know those benefits are out there and they need to go and probably just spend 5 minutes looking it up, 10 minutes doing the thing, and you get that free money.
Exactly. It's definitely not talked about enough. And I was shown a website, a couple of weeks ago where there was, you probably got your boots from the same website too, or went through the same method. But you can use these resources. You can collect a couple $100s from your employer, or even use the HCSA and purchase shoes that will improve your health. You can purchase protein powder. You can purchase even a bench press. It's just the amount of things out there that you can use that you can purchase to actually improve your health. Once it is improving your health, that limit is quite vast, and you're gonna realize there is a decent amount of opportunity in that space to buy things.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with the 401k too. Just I think a lot of people think that it's not worth contributing that much to your 401k when I think the 401k is is definitely a retirement vehicle that everyone should be striving to max out. I mean, you don't have to put in the limit every year. But I think a lot of people don't even get the match from their employer or realize how that works or even how the vesting schedule works either. I know one person at one of the companies that I worked at, I said, you pretty much have to stay here at least 3 years or 5 years to get that match vested in your account. And they thought, oh, I don't know what that means, or I don't really care about that. I'm getting the 3% or the 5% match from them. I'm good. But I'm gonna get this new job that pays me more, so I'm gonna go leave. And it's like, yeah, that will pay you more in the short term, but also you're gonna give up like five, 10, $15,000 in your 401k because of that match that your company provides because you didn't stay 6 more months. And that money could turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars in your retirement account when you retire, but you forego it because you just wanted to leave your job before the 6 months was up. And I think a lot of people don't really read the fine print or realize that.
Yeah, it's definitely important to look into that because there is a significant amount of gain to be had in these accounts where, if you're slightly over the vesting schedule, then you get everything. So, for example, the vesting schedule I am in, it's called a waterfall vesting, where after a specific point, all of it vests. And right now, my account is like the vesting ratio is low because we just started the year, but I really only need to wait a bit longer, and then everything I have will vest in my account. So it's really important that if you're looking for a job switch, if you're looking to quit your job, maybe pivot into something completely different, to read the fine print behind some of these vesting schedules, behind some of these accounts, and ensuring that you are making the best decision for yourself based on all the knowledge you have.
Yeah, and when you change jobs, I would highly recommend transferring that 401k into your own brokerage account that you can actually manage because a lot of times these 401k plans, they offer not the best or not ideal options for you to invest your money in, and they might only give you, say, like a target fund or a like an income generation fund or something that's just not exactly like Vanguard's S&P 500 VOO or or a SPY or something like that. And I remember when I transferred my 401k over within I think the year it doubled because of just the market performance and the specific stocks that I put it in because that I wanted to invest in compared to just leaving it in the previous 401k plan that was returning me like maybe 6% a year because that was like the highest growth option that I could have. And just to see that plan go from like X amount to double was worth it enough, in my opinion, to move it over.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to, look at the options you have out there, see what your current 401k manager from your firm is offering, and really create the best investment profile for you as an individual. Obviously, if you're new to the firm, new to the job market, and you just started at your new company, you're going to have longer to retire. So you're going to be wanting to hold more volatile assets, more and be more risk on seeing that you're going to be invested for the next 40 years. And obviously, if you're closer to retirement, you're going to lean off of equities a bit, invest a bit more into something more value related, something more traditional like fixed income, and to ensure that your investment and net worth is preserved throughout retirement. But I think people just need to make that first step of looking into what is being managed, seeing what offerings are out there, and ensuring you're actually tailoring the best investment portfolio for you.
All right, so we will call it there. Thank you all for tuning in to our first kind of pilot-ish episode of our podcast. We'll try to do one of these every week, and then you can catch highlights and clips over on our socials. So we have everything from TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we'll upload the podcast with just like background visuals to YouTube, and then we'll also upload just the raw audio to YouTube. There's now a podcast section, and I think that they're different, so we'll do both of those. And then if we get enough feedback that you'd rather have it on Spotify and Apple, then or in an Apple podcast that is, then maybe we'll also post it on there. But at the moment, this will be a YouTube exclusive for the most part as far as the long form podcast goes. But thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next podcast.
You guys, bye.